And where you see one old ship, I see home. And that is always worth fighting for.
Captain James Cutter. James Cutter was born on Reach in June of 2479, and after graduating high school was pressured into obtaining a degree from his father, to which he refused and enlisted as an ensign in the UN Colony Logistics Office and subsequently flight school, which was poorly received by his father, who abandoned him, saying, "Nothing more than a trucker," as his final words. Cutter entered the UNSC School of the North Star in 2500, where he studied astronavigation and political science. Post-graduation, he was sent to Officer Candidate School. With his new skills in command and navigation, he entered naval service in 2507 as a lieutenant and served aboard the Stick, a diplomatic attaché vessel assigned to the UNSC Brilliant Shores. 7 years later, he was transferred to the UNSC Final Summit as the ship's chief navigation officer. Cutter was promoted to the rank of commander in 2519 upon his transfer and actions upon the UNSC Glasgow. His actions against the terrorists of the Epsilon Eridani system caught the attention of the UNSC. One thing about the reason why the UNSC was prepared for war against the Covenant and the catalyst for creation of the Spartan II program was the current war against the terrorist factions appearing all over UNSC-controlled space. Between the years of 2424 and 2525, Cutter had an extramarital affair with a woman on a UNSC planet, producing a son, Daniel Clayton, who would rise to the rank of captain, and after finding that his lifelong benefactor was Captain Terence Hood, sought vengeance on the UNSC and Hood personally, attacking both Hood, his political missions, and the UNSC Infinity. Shortly after the beginning of the war with the Covenant, Vice Admiral Cole handpicked Cutter to command the Spirit of Fire, which was to be the central hub for repair, supply, and forward deployment of Battle Group D, 3rd Fleet. Aboard the Spirit of Fire, stories of Cutter's behavior began to spread to worlds that they had visited, involving Cutter strolling the corridors of the Spirit of Fire at night to check on his crew, resulting in him being so well respected that inner colony coffee houses gave him free coffee beans to take on long deployments. Around the same time of Cutter's promotion to captain, his father and he reconciled aboard the Spirit of Fire. Cutter was offered command of the UNSC Prophecy, a Marathon-class heavy cruiser, which he turned down, stating that he enjoyed the Spirit of Fire and the fact that it was stationed near his home planet of Reach. Upon reaching Harvest, after the battle had ceased, his first task was to initiate the hyperdermic FXTJ within the UNSC Prophecy, which is an order given by Admiral Cole to all UNSC forces stating that any and all references, materials, and shipboard AIs that come in contact and are ultimately incapable of escape, victory, or protection are to be destroyed with no chance for retrieval or repair. This protocol was developed by Admiral Cole as an attempt to protect Earth's location from falling into Covenant hands, and was thusly named the Cole Protocol among UNSC forces. By the time Professor Anders and Cutter met, Cutter was already an established and formidable force. For more information on who Anders is and her story, check out my Anders Lore video, link in the description. Cutter had developed a close working relationship with the Spirit of Fire's shipboard AI, Serena. Although Cutter was at first suspicious of Anders when she was forcibly recruited and put on his ship, he saw potential in the civilian scientist. Although Harvest was eventually retaken by the human forces, Cutter keeps the Spirit of Fire at maximum alert in readiness of the Covenant returning to retake Harvest. Cutter and the Spirit of Fire remain in the Harvest system to monitor and find out why the Covenant are so interested in Harvest. Upon the discovery of an alien structure at the northern pole of Harvest, the decision is made to travel to Arcadia, which Anders believes is where the structure was pointing to. After arriving at Arcadia, it is made known to Cutter that the Covenant forces in the area have made landfall, and after ordering Sergeant Forge, Spartan Jerome, and Anders down to the surface to quell the Covenant forces, Anders is kidnapped by the Arbiter, Ripper Morami. Anders is thusly taken aboard a Covenant destroyer, which quickly leaves the system at a slip space entry speed. After taking into consideration Forge's recommendation of rescue and Jerome's suggestion of destroying the Covenant vessel, Cutter decides to follow the Covenant destroyer into slipspace. Cutter leaves a log buoy behind at Arcadia, detailing their location and direction, but Captain Terence Hood's disregard for orders preventing conflict with the Covenant resulted in the destruction of the log. From this point onward, the Spirit of Fire is considered missing in action by the UNSC. After exiting slipspace in a previously uncharted sector, Anders' transponder was identified, and the Spirit of Fire's medical team identified a hostile virus, later known to be the Flood, had taken hold aboard what is now known to be a shield world. The Spirit of Fire immediately engaged in ground operations to rescue Anders, which were cut short when the Spirit of Fire began to be dragged into a chasm underneath an artificial lake. Cutter ordered Serena to keep the ship steady and out of the chasm until all surface forces were back on board, ultimately risking the structural integrity of the ship, which Cutter remedied by having the newly returned ground forces to disperse upon the dorsal side of the Spirit of Fire to perform repairs and fend off hostiles in order to maintain structural integrity. Shortly after this, the Spirit of Fire emerged into the inner core of the shield world and immediately engaged in point-blank combat with a CPV-class Covenant destroyer. Shortly after, Anders escapes capture and was rescued from both the Flood and Covenant forces by Sergeant Forge. Anders informed Captain Cutter that the Covenant were planning to use a fleet of Forerunner dreadnoughts against the human forces. Anders suggests to use the Spirit of Fire's faster-than-light drive to blow up the sun within the shield world. Cutter, knowing full well that this would limit the Spirit of Fire to sublight speed, agreed that this was the only option to save humanity. Cutter ordered the deployment of the FTL drive and thusly orders Serena to slingshot around the sun and back out of the shield world the same way they came in, to which Serena replied, "Threading a needle while accelerating around an exploding star inside a planet that's falling apart? Sure, why not?" After the shield world is destroyed, Captain Cutter orders all Spirit of Fire crew into cryosleep. The final shot of Halo Wars 1 is Captain Cutter closing Sergeant Forge's empty cryo chamber as Forge sacrificed himself to detonate the FTL drive. This concludes the story of Halo Wars 1. During the time between Halo Wars 1 and Halo Wars 2, the Spirit of Fire's classification was shifted from missing in action to lost with all hands. A memorial for the Spirit of Fire was erected and a memorial service was held, to which most family members did not attend, for hope that the vessel was still out there somewhere. Halo Wars 2 opens with a self-eulogy written by Serena and delivered to Captain Cutter upon his awakening from cryosleep. The Spirit of Fire receives a message from an encrypted UNSC outpost. Cutter is visibly pleased, admitting that this means either the UNSC is still fighting or that they won the war against the Covenant. Cutter immediately deploys troops to scout the installation they are above, later known as Installation 00, the Ark. Upon the return of the scout teams, Cutter and Isabel, the UNSC AI within a research station aboard the Ark, meet for the first time. Isabel tells Cutter that the Spirit of Fire and all crew should run, escape the system, and that such an old ship and small crew numbers would have no hope of standing against the banished forces. Captain Cutter delivers arguably one of the most inspiring speeches I have ever heard and rallies the Spirit of Fire's crew and Isabel herself to the cause of fighting the banished. During the events of Halo Wars 2, Cutter displays expert strategical decisions, beginning with removing Atriox's second-in-command, Decimus, disabling the portal network aboard the Ark, and finally holding out against and destroying the Banished's only mean of interplanetary transport, the Enduring Conviction. Although Captain Cutter is a main force in Halo Wars 2, he doesn't participate in surface combat himself, leading operations from aboard the Spirit of Fire. At the end of Halo Wars 2, Anders is lost aboard the deployed Halo Ring, which is devastating to Cutter, as he has now lost Sergeant Forge, Anders, and Serena in under a year. I say under a year, although the events of Halo Wars 2 takes place 28 years after Halo Wars 1, but the crew was in cryosleep all that time, ultimately making it like a 28-year-long sleep. When Cutter loses Anders, his emotions do not betray him, and he is immediately back to work to deal with the banished forces aboard the Ark. Captain Cutter gave off an aura of an intelligent and thoughtful leader that carried the weight of the entire conflict on his shoulders. He was described as putting in twice as much energy into his tactics, strategies, and work than men half of his age. He had a distaste for pomp and circumstance and lacked a flourish about his work, which rallied many behind him and made him a perfect, level-headed leader for many battles. His approach toward his crew was that if you got to know your crew on a personal level, they would give you 200% of any man or woman when the time required this level of effort. This belief, mixed with his unwillingness to step on his fellow UNSC members, stopped him from becoming an admiral, to which he could become simply if he wanted to. Captain Cutter's favourite word is rendezvous. He got it right in a Year 6 spelling test and grew ever more fond of the word. He sometimes refers to spacefaring ships in terms of seafaring ships, although never having actually seen a seafaring vessel. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed learning about Captain James Cutter as much as I did. I certainly enjoyed learning about his son, Daniel Clayton, which I found out led a rebellion. So if there's anything that you particularly enjoyed, please leave a comment below and let me know. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. So leave a comment, a like, and a subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thank you very much.
So no, Isabel. We won't be running anywhere today.
Sir, yes, sir.